Good day, and welcome, Judge Leon W. Tucker.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. This is the Senior Judges and Retired Judges Oral History Project. Welcome. Judge Tucker, I'd like to talk about where you came from. Are you a native Philadelphian?
I am. I grew up in North Philadelphia, 28th and Diamond, in fact, and went to public school here in Philadelphia.
Which public school?
I went to Edward Gideon at 29th and Glenwood, and then Thomas Fitzsimons at 26th and Cumberland, and then Strawberry Mansion. As a matter of fact, I was in the first graduating class. It was a junior high school then.
Okay.
And then I went to Dobbins. And graduated from Dobbins in 1968.
Oh, wow. And
Yeah.
Dobbins was a vocational and technical school, is that right?
It was.
Okay.
And it's a long story, but the short story is that when I was in Fitzsimons, the counselor basically said that didn't think that was academic material. And so I wanted to go to Central, and they directed me to Dobbins, and I took up automotive maintenance. I'm still involved in cars, and having graduated from Dobbins, I had a scholarship to General Motors School in Morristown, New Jersey, and but I was 17. I just turned 17 when I graduated, and as a result, I couldn't do the scholarship, and I couldn't work in automotive maintenance because of my age, and ended up working at Strawbridge and Clothier. And as a result of that, I was in the menswear department, and a guy by the name of Ralph Walker was the buyer. And after about 6 months, he insisted that I go to college. And as a result, my sister went to Central State University, and she was home for the holidays and saw my $38 a week paycheck.
Ooh.
Yes. And she insisted that I go to Central State. So I went to Central State University in Ohio. Yeah.
And that's an historically black college.
HBCU.
Yes.
It is. It is. It was once part of Wilberforce University, and the state wanted to fund it, and the CME Church, I believe it was, didn't want to be funded, so they split in 1951, and Central State became Central State.
Yeah. So I wonder what is it that you found in yourself at 18 years old to defy your teachers who thought you should go to a vocational school? Did you?
Well, I really couldn't defy them. I ended up going to a vocational school. I didn't have a choice, and my parents neither had a high school completion. They trusted the guidance counselor and thought that the guidance counselor knew what she was talking about, and said, yeah, okay, well, you got to go to Dobbins. And so I went to Dobbins.
Okay.
So it wasn't me being defiant,
Yeah.
I was being compliant more than anything
Okay.
else.
Yeah. So when you got to Central State, did you have, what was your course of study there?
Business administration with a concentration in finance and management.
So what was your intention? Did you want to be a business owner? Or?
I did. It was my intention to be an entrepreneur, and mainly somewhere in the area of automotive, I don't know, dealership or shop or something, but along those lines. And one thing led to another, and after graduating, I had a fraternity brother who went to University of Kentucky. I used to visit him in Kentucky, and I thought, wow, if this guy can do it, I know I can do it. So as a result, I ended up going to University of Kentucky. I didn't go right away. I stayed out a semester because I wanted to make some money. I ended up working at Polaroid in Norwood, right outside of Boston, Massachusetts. Worked there for 6 months, and it was a culture shock. Having grown up in North Philadelphia, having gone to HBCU, I was thrust into a working atmosphere where there were senior citizens who had never had any personal contact with a black male. And again, this was in 1972, so what you're talking about was the Afro movement, if you will. I mean, I had an Afro at least that big. And in Boston, there were, I would say, racial skirmishes and whatnot going on. They didn't particularly care for me, and I had my personal thoughts about them. And so I contacted the University of Law School that had accepted me back in June and told them that I wanted to come.
Okay.
Probably was not the best decision that I made because when I started in January.
Oh,
So all of the students that were on my curve in grading, they had Con Law 1, criminal law, all of that. And I had not a clue what I was doing. I was reading cases, didn't understand them,
yeah.
but studied hard, and I ended up going all year round, and got out in 2 years as opposed to 3. Even with,
impressive.
there was a point where I had come home for Christmas, and a good dear friend of mine, Hardy Williams, was campaigning. As a matter of fact, I went down to Strawbridge and Clothier to see Ralph Walker, and Hardy was campaigning outside of Strawbridge, and really intrigued me. You know, I got to meet him, and he suggested that I come by his office before I went back, and I went by his office, and I didn't go back. I stayed out a semester and worked in his congressional campaign. He didn't win, but nonetheless, I mean, the experience was invaluable for me.
What did you do for his congressional campaign?
I was mainly his bagman, if you will,
Okay.
in a positive sense. You know, I was taking care of his schedule, going ahead, seeing what the audience was like, looking at the issues, researching the issues, and that type of thing. At the time, he was practicing law as well, and campaigning was part-time for him.
Right.
And so I'd go to court with him during the day, and just was learning things and meeting people. And some of those people are still around today,
Right.
are very close friends of mine today.
And this is there are 2 Hardy Williamses. This is the first.
This is, you're referring to Senator Anthony Hardy Williams.
Okay.
I'm talking about his dad.
Yes.
Hardy Williams.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after you worked in that congressional campaign, you went back to law school.
I did.
And what year did you graduate?
75.
75.
December of 75.
December of 75.
Yeah.
What was your first job out of law school?
Back with Hardy Williams.
Okay. Yeah.
Back with Hardy Williams, clerking for him. I had passed the bar in April. I got out in December, so I was with him. And once I passed the bar, I went with the City of Philadelphia Family Court as an intake attorney, reviewing the police reports and formulating the charges against juveniles.
And were there any things that surprised you about working in juvenile court?
Well, I was surprised that there were so many kids being arrested for matters. Well, I guess really surprising was the age of the kids. Some of the kids were under 7, which really couldn't be nothing you could do but, you know, talk to the parents. But other than that, and these were pretty serious things. You know, throwing rocks at trains and things like that. Yeah.
And after the juvenile branch, what type of work did you do?
Oh, I went to the district attorney's office as assistant DA. And that was that was in maybe 76, October of 76, and I stayed there for I guess about maybe 4 or 5 years or so.
Which unit?
Well, at that point, I was in the preliminary hearing unit, municipal court, waivers unit, and the felony unit. And then when I got to the felony unit, I decided it was time for me to leave. Having tried, I guess, maybe 10, 15 jury trials, it was time to do something different.
What was it about the working in the felony unit that made you want to move on?
Well, I mean, it wasn't that much I could do in the DA's office. I mean, I had been in the appeals unit, had written, I wrote briefs and whatnot, and having tried jury trials, it was really nothing else for me to do, whether it was a homicide or whether it was an aggravated assault. A jury trial pretty much is a jury trial. So having lived through several jury trials, it was time for me to move on and do something different.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was it that you wanted to do, and did you end up doing it?
Well, yeah, sure. I ended up, I went to go out and practice for myself, and I did. And, my dear friends from back then are no longer with us, but there were remnants of the Austin Norris firm, Herb Hutton, Austin Norris Jr., and Ira Wells was still maintaining the office of Austin Norris, and they allowed me to come practice with them. And I'm indebted to them, basically, because they insisted that I not pay rent for 6 months. And they had criminal cases that they didn't know how to handle, what to do, and I was doing that for them. And as a result, after 6 months, they said, look, you're still not ready to pay rent. And so
Wow.
it was for a year. I was with them and didn't pay rent, and just learned everything that I could possibly learn from those attorneys who had been at the bar for at least 10, 15, 20 years. And as a result, just hung out and did pretty much everything. I had a real general practice from contract negotiations to bond work. As a matter of fact, the Criminal Justice Center was part of it. And those bond documents, you'll see my name on those bond documents as co-bond counsel, as a matter of fact.
I've
Yeah.
always thought it brave for attorneys to engage in a general practice like you had.
Well, you could do that then, but you can't
Yeah.
do it now.
Yeah.
Now everything is so specific. And even within, let's say med-mal cases, which I did several of, there are specifics in specific areas in med-mal.
Right.
Some attorneys only do brain damage cases, others do just lung cases with asbestos and those other cancer-causing diseases. And even in criminal law, I mean, now you have some attorneys, all they do is DUI cases, driving while intoxicated cases. But you can't do it now.
Yeah.
And back then, I guess, through my involvement with the Philadelphia Bar Association, I guess there were somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 12,000 attorneys in the Philadelphia area. Now, I would imagine there's at least 30,000 or so.
Right.
So the pot is much smaller. So you have to concentrate in a specific area that you know what you're doing.
Yes. So you practiced with this firm for how many years?
Wow. From 2000, no, from 19, it was 27 years altogether until I
Wow.
went on the bench.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. At the same location in the Robinson Building, 15th and Chestnut. So yeah, from 1978 till 2005.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you ascended to the bench in 2005.
I was appointed by Governor Rendell in June of 2005. Got approved by the Senate in July and shut down my practice and took my oath in December of 2005.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was your first assignment when you got to the Court of Common Pleas?
I was in the waivers doing bench trials, major felonies, but at the same time, cases without a jury. And in December, I got assigned to gun court. Gun court back then was a court that was established by the AJ, Administrative Judge Fitzgerald, where if you got arrested for possession of a gun, nothing else, no robberies or anything, assaults or anything like that, then there was a special court to handle that. So I sat in there for a year. Somewhere in the neighborhood of around 1,500 cases or so I heard in a year.
Wow.
And for the most part, these individuals had no prior record, for the most part. And my spiel to them pretty much was, if you come back, I'm going to have to give you state time, and that's my promise to you. and those who came back, and there weren't very many. And I'm pretty sure that's pretty why they stopped gun court, because there wasn't that much recidivism.
Right.
And as a result, like I said, it was around 1,500 cases or so that appeared before me.
Wow.
And yeah, I think it worked out well.
Sounds
Worked out
like it.
well. Yeah.
What was your next step after that program?
After that, I was doing major juries, everything except homicides.
Okay.
I did that for a year, and then I was assigned the task of being the calendar judge to assign cases to the other judges in the major calendar program. And I did that for a year.
You eventually became the supervising judge of criminal court.
Yeah, that was in 2016.
Okay.
But along the way to there, I was assigned a motion court with Judge Fox, and we had a sort of a tag team going on there, and it was fun doing the appeals from municipal agencies, parking authority, housing authority, what have you. And then from there, I was doing civil cases, med mal, products liability. And then Judge Allen was appointed the administrative judge. And she asked me to be the supervising judge for the criminal section. And I flat out refused for 2 weeks. But she leaned on me pretty hard. And it was a good experience. And I think we were an excellent team together. Yeah.
What was it about the thought of being the supervising judge of criminal court that had you?
Wow. I mean, could you imagine? It's like herding centipedes. It's a matter of attempting to supervise about 40 individuals who have law degrees, who have egos that are on a fast track to wherever they think it's supposed to lead them, wearing black robes. It's almost impossible. But fortunately, it worked out. I've received a lot of compliments, having left the bench full time. I mean, it makes me feel good that people still remember me and the things that I did and the way I did it back then.
Yeah. I asked a few of the other judges what soft skills you need to be a supervising judge, given all of the things that you just mentioned.
Well, you have to understand personalities. And you have to understand what is a carrot to some people. And you have to have a soft stick. And you have to be compassionate. And you have to understand the institutional history of the First Judicial District and the Court of Common Pleas. I didn't invent any new wheels or anything like that. I took suggestions from judges in different units, even in family court. And there were a lot of things that we had to do. During the course of my tenure as supervising judge in the very beginning, in the case of Terrence Williams, the Supreme Court of the United States came down with a ruling that juveniles cannot be sentenced to life without parole. In Philadelphia alone, I think we had close to 500 cases.
Wow.
I stand corrected. In the state of Pennsylvania, we had 500 cases. And in Philadelphia, I think we had somewhere in the neighborhood of around half of that.
Wow.
So we had to devise a method to resentence all of those individuals. And it was a task, but I had open ears, listening to the Defender Association, the private bar, the DA, and we came up with a plan and did it. And in fact, we did it probably in less than a year.
Wow.
I know we did it for the most part before COVID hit. And everyone, for the most part, was satisfied with the way that we did it. So it was things like that came about that just had to listen to people, understand what their concerns were, what the problems were, and just try to work a resolution that would satisfy everyone.
And you probably used those same skills in maneuvering through the COVID challenges. You were the supervising judge
Yeah,
then,
I
too.
was, and that was a real task. Some people thought that the supervising judge just had the authority to sign an order releasing everyone from prison. And they just perhaps forgot that once a sentence is handed down, after 30 days, judges lose jurisdiction. They don't have any method or any way of resolving it. But what we were able to do is to have people file petitions for relief. And some of them were released to house arrest or some way that, or somewhere where they could be watched, as opposed to just opening the doors and letting them out. And it was a tough task. I mean, there was the black clergy involved. There was other groups, the NAACP, and rightfully so. They were concerned because when COVID first hit, folks were thinking that the jails were kind of like a petri dish where COVID is going to get there and manifest itself, and as a result, we'll just have people in prison dying left and right. But the prison commissioner at the time, Commissioner Carney, was excellent. I mean, she knew what she was doing, she knew how to handle it, and she handled it well. We had meetings twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, with the Bar Association, criminal section, the DA's office, the Defenders Association, the Managing Director's office. Everyone was involved in it, and I mean, we worked it out.
Yeah, I know that was a challenge in other jurisdictions where they did not work it out
Yeah.
quite so well. So,
Yeah.
are there any notable cases that you've had during your time as a judge that you want to reminisce about?
No, candidly. The only ones that really stick out in my mind were some heinous things that were done to people. It just really showed man's inhumanity to man. Just some terrible things that were done. But there were some fun cases, mostly on the civil side, that were pleasurable in terms of how business partners really cared about one another and for whatever reason decided they wanted to break up. And it was all about money and sometimes millions of dollars. And oftentimes I'd sit on a bench trial or even a jury trial, sit and listen to the evidence, and at the end of the case, just tell counsel that you really need to solve this because neither of you are going to like the way this jury is going to render its decision.
Right.
And oftentimes that would resolve it. And on bench trials, I'd say that to them, and it often would be a business relationship, a law firm, for instance. Guys practicing for 10, 15, 20 years, and for whatever reason, they just wanted to break up and were hateful to each other. And, after the testimony, I'd say, look, now that you're going to really like either the way that I'm going to do it and the appellate courts, I'm basing this on credibility.
Right.
And so it's going to be difficult for this. And both of you really aren't telling the truth.
Right.
So my suggestion is that you resolve this. And more times than not, it resolved. Because I'd get to the personal aspects of it. How many nights have you, laid asleep, awake, trying to get to sleep, and couldn't because you're fretting over this? If you don't resolve this, this is just going to continue. It's going to continue on. And I could see either the family or someone related to one of the parties in the back shaking their head like, yeah.
It always has reverberations.
It does.
So
Yeah.
I have a question about how you handled a steady diet of homicide cases. Was there something that you would do to decompress from those things?
No, and it's not me that you should be asking that question to. I did it for maybe a year and a half, I think.
Okay.
but there are other judges who did this for more than 10 years.
Okay.
I mean, the current SJ, she took my docket when I went to civil. That was in 2007, and she was just appointed supervising judge maybe last month,
Okay.
and this is 2023.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I don't know how they do it. I
Yeah.
really don't. I didn't want to go to homicide, but again, I was called to do it, and after around 20 minutes of saying no, I said yes, and
There's
I
a
did
theme here.
it is,
Yeah.
it is, it is. And a lot has to do with who's asking
Yeah.
and how they're asking as well. Yeah.
So you also went to Commerce Court for a while. Is that right?
Yeah, I left Commerce Court in 2022, I guess it was, with the intention on taking senior status. And I didn't want to just leave abruptly as SJ. And so having talked to the administrative judge, a path was laid for me to go to Commerce Court. And I really enjoyed it there. It was fun. The attorneys were excellent for the most part. The issues were huge. Some cases, millions and millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. And just to see how those attorneys practice much differently from attorneys, say, in the criminal arena, more detail. No, flying from the hip or anything of that nature. And some of those cases last, 15, 20 years. So you've got to have someone in there who's in there for the long haul, or either bring someone in later who knows what to do and how to do it.
So you are are you working as a senior judge, or are you?
Well, I've been called, and I've decided not to go back yet.
Okay.
But
Okay.
sometime probably. Well, I just left in
You need a
in
vacation.
September,
Right?
so it's been fun.
Yeah.
I've had a chance to do some traveling and visiting family and doing some other things, and I miss it in a small way. Not like I'm banging the door to get back in here, but
Right.
but I miss the other judges, the conversations, and I still participate in the Zoom calls for the CJEs and that type of thing. And it's good to see them there, and we'll get together occasionally outside of court. As a matter of fact, we'll get together Saturday, I think. A group of us getting together for kind of a summer picnic.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Retired judges or just?
No, just
Yeah.
just judges. Most of them are
judges.
still sitting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You also, I forgot to ask you about this. You had worked on the ethics advisory committee. Is that right?
Yeah. The ethics committee of the Pennsylvania Conference of State Trial Judges, which was established, I guess, back in the 60s or so, to advise judges who have ethical questions about how they should handle certain aspects of their private life, as well as their professional lives as well. I served on that for about 11 years or so, and proud to say that was really one of the highlights of my judicial career. Having been involved in that, there were about 16 of us appointed across the state to receive and review inquiries regarding ethics and to render an opinion based on the Code of Judicial Conduct. And I guess somewhere in the neighborhood of a couple thousand opinions that I wrote, and wow, more than that I reviewed, because each judge from across the state would have inquiries to them, and we'd circulate it and review it. We'd meet quarterly in different places in the state and review it. And either agree or disagree, and send a formal opinion to the judge that was inquiring.
And these are all advisory opinions?
Advisory opinions,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And I guess it was maybe in 2015 or 14 or so. No, it was later than that. It had to be maybe 2000 or so, or 20,000 rather, that the Supreme Court decided that they wanted to do it a different way.
Okay.
And they formed the Ethics Advisory Board. And so that's in place now. Yeah.
So how are you chosen for the ethics board that you
The
served
the
on?
president of the Conference of State Trial Judges
Okay.
appoint you. And the conference is broken down into zones, different parts of the state. And so when someone from one zone resigns or goes off for whatever reason, the president will usually pick someone from that zone to fill that spot.
So obviously, you have been held in high regard by your colleagues. You have exhibited great drive throughout your career. What is it that has been a guiding principle, or what are your guiding principles through? What's led you through?
Well, mainly, this is something that carried over from my practice. Again, a dear friend of mine, Herb Hutton, who in 1988 was appointed to the federal bench. And he was one of the guys, he was the main guy that brought me out of the DA's office to practice with them. Just basically was do what is right. Don't worry about money. Money will follow if you do what you know is the right thing to do. And I just carried that, and I abide by that principle even now. Just try to do what you know is right, and don't worry about the impressions that someone else or what someone else is thinking. Just do what is right, and if you could back it up, then do it.
Well, it has been my honor, Judge Leon W. Tucker, to conduct this interview, and thank you very much.
Well,
It's been
thank
a
you for
pleasure.
having me.
Absolutely.